Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. As you probably already noticed, today we're driving the brand new Audi e-Tron Sportback. But before we get into it, I'm gonna ask you guys to subscribe to this channel if you didn't already do that. It helps me grow. As you can see, I have very low numbers and I keep working for you guys, but you know, some reward has to be shown for my work as well. So if you ever found a video on my channel useful, just hit that subscribe button. I promise you won't be disappointed. Getting back to the car at hand here, well, this is my first time behind the wheel of an electric Audi, and the thing is, it's natural because electric cars with four rings at the front are a brand new thing. So the first one was the e-Tron. The e-Tron is a full-size SUV launched at the end of 2018, and now, nearly 2 years later, the Sportback version came out. So you might be thinking, why did Audi decide to launch a Sportback version of the e-Tron? Since we all know Sportbacks aren't really as popular as their regular versions anyway, and you would think that, you know, sales would be rather low for the e-Tron. Well, you would be wrong, because the e-Tron last year became the most popular electric SUV in Europe, and that's not an easy thing to do. And you know what? Orders kept pouring in so harsh. Orders kept pouring in, and Audi was simply overcome by the popularity of the car. So, you know, delays were expected back when the e-Tron was launched because everybody wanted one and so on. So yeah, this is a popular car, and Audi decided to offer a Sportback version as well. What does that mean? Well, if you know anything about Audi and its model range, you know that Sportback in Audi speak means coupe. So this is basically an SUV coupe model. I prefer the Sportback name compared to the usual coupe versions you hear at the BMW and the Mercedes, because it's closer to fastback, which is what these cars are actually could be defined as. They are fastbacks, not necessarily coupe models. But getting beyond that, the entire discussion, you'll notice that Audi tried to offer an electric car without having a lot of compromises to deal with. Initially, electric car makers decided that they should make their cars look different than anything else on the road, because they thought customers wanted that. They thought, you know what, this car is special and it has to look special in order to, you know, translate that into a special feeling for anyone driving. But the problem is, most of the time, their special designs were flops. Now, the best example in that regard is the BMW i3. The i3 is a brilliant car. I love it a lot. Drives well, has a lot of eco-friendly character, you know, does everything right. But the problem is its design. So it doesn't look as good as, it doesn't look good, period. Some people like it, but most people just don't, because of those skinny tires, that tiny footprint, and so on. So I think if the i3 had a more conventional design, it would have been a big sales hit. But considering how it turned out, it did have decent sales, but not nearly as much as it could have if it had a different design. Now, Audi decided to go in a different direction. They wanted to create a conventional car, but they just wanted to change the propulsion system. So they decided to create this car looking like a lot of the other models in the Audi range. So you'll notice the big grille up front. The headlights have a similar design to what you see in other cars in the range. There's nothing shouting that this car is an electric model by any means. From a distance, you could mistake it for a Q5 or a Q7. It's really not that standoffish. It doesn't really stand out in the crowd. So that's something that I'm sure contributed a lot to the popularity of this car. Also, inside, everything looks just like you would expect it. It looks like a modern day Audi with all these layered designs, and I actually love it. I think it's the best design in the segment right now in terms of looks. I'll get to the ergonomics a bit later on. So we have good materials over here. This is a brushed aluminum trim. Everywhere you look, you have leather, steel, or glass. So that's a premium feeling all the way. There are some plastics like over here, but most of them are soft touch plastics. And I think you would expect that on a car that's 100,000 euros. So yeah, it feels good, looks good. The problem I have with all this glass and all these screens is that they might be iffy to use at times. What I mean by that is, you know, we're used to having touch screens everywhere these days, on our phones, on our tablets, on our screens. So we are used to, you know, utilizing them in a certain way. It doesn't work that way in this car, in any Audi, as a matter of fact. You don't just touch the screen to offer it an input. You have to press it. And that takes a bit of time to get used to. But once you do, it's really easy to use. And I don't really have a problem with it. You know, you just have to press a bit harder and the screen actually reacts, offering haptic feedback. It feels close to the old school feel of a button, if you will. The main problem is you have to take your eyes off the road in order to operate anything on this system. And it's quite distracting. I mean, I'm sure after a while you get used to it. You kind of know where everything is at, so you can actually press the button you want to without having to take your eyes off the road. But during my time with the car, I found this very distracting to use. Also, all these screens gather a lot of dust, a lot of fingerprints. You have to clean them often. If you are a cleaning freak, they will be your worst nightmare. Luckily for me, I'm not a cleaning freak, so you know, that really doesn't bother me. Yeah, I clean it once in a while, but it's not that bad. The main thing to take away from my review of this infotainment setup is that it's easy to use. The menus aren't too complicated. The graphics are great. They look good. They give the entire car a premium futuristic feel, and that's, I think, what Audi was banking on. The instrument cluster is also classic Audi. Looks good, feels good, has plenty of information of all sorts for any type of driving situation. So everything is just like you would find in a regular Audi. The only difference is the instrument cluster has a different kind of information because this is an electric car. So on the left side, for example, you don't have a rev counter. You have a power display, which shows just how much of the available power you are using in your car. So those kind of things, you know, the range and so on, they are a bit different compared to a regular Audi, but they have to be because this is a different car. But other than that, you feel right as you would in any A6, A8 inside the e-Tron. The leather is great, plenty of useful storage spaces all around. The car heats up really fast. In 5 minutes you have heat because the weather has been quite cold during my time with the car, so I did notice how fast the car would heat up. And I have to talk about the digital mirrors. Now this is, luckily, fortunately for everyone, this is an option, but you can get cameras instead of rear view mirrors. So, and what that does is you get instead of the classic rear view mirror, you get a digital camera that projects the image on this door panel over here. Now initially what you have to get used to is not look out the window anymore when you're trying to check your mirrors. Just look on the door panel, which is rather easy to get used to. The problem I have with these cameras is that they don't really offer a sense of depth. So you don't really know how far the car behind you is. And also the visibility is quite limited. It's as if the exterior rear view mirrors would be really small. So you don't get a good look outside. They look nice inside. They make the whole interior feel premium and futuristic, but they are really not useful. And they are extremely troublesome when you're trying to park this car. So The parking sensors will trigger really easily, even though you're pretty far apart from the cars next to you, and you don't really get to see anything in these mirrors. It's quite an adventure. Luckily, the car can be fitted with 360-degree cameras, and they help out a lot, and they work brilliantly. They help out a lot when you're trying to park. Without them, it would be an interesting exercise. So that's it. There's plenty of technology on board. I'm not against technology, but I think technology should be used to make our lives easier, not offer some additional headaches. So if we're implementing these digital rear view mirrors on our cars, I think they should be done better in order to help us out, not give us headaches, as I already said. So what's hiding under the sheet metal? Well, you have a couple of options on the e-Tron Sportback. The one we're driving is the e-Tron 55 Quattro. 55 tells you just how much power this car has. It can deliver up to 408 horsepower, and I'm saying up to in the purest form of the word, because the car has two motors. It has an electric motor on the front axle and one on the back. The one in the front has 170 horsepower. The one in the back has 190. So most of the time you'll be driving around town, you are using 360 horsepower. The car can deliver up to 408 horsepower with a boost feature. So it only offers that amount of power for a limited amount of time. Torque is also up to 664 Newton meters, which is a pretty hefty sum. And it feels the car can do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 5.7 seconds, which is decent considering it's really heavy. It weighs 2.5 tons. So yeah, that's really good. Also, you should know there are different driving modes on this car. Basically, you have like 7 driving modes. I don't remember exactly. So there's off-road, all-road, efficiency, comfort, auto, and dynamic. Those are the driving modes you get. In off-road, you activate both axles because normally the car will drive around using only the rear motor. So the front one only chips in from time to time. That's also something you might want to keep in mind. So you have all these driving modes, but other than that, you also have a sort of sport mode for the gearbox. Normally the car is, when you put it in drive, it drives really smooth. Now, you know, electric cars have torque available instantly from 0 RPM. So whenever you mash the go faster pedal, it reacts instantly. But on the e-Tron, it's pretty obvious. Audi wanted to deliver a smooth experience, a calm and comfortable experience. So they toned down the acceleration. So even if you press harder on the gas, the go faster pedal, it will accelerate smoothly. It's not going to be jerky. It's not going to be brutal. But if you switch the gear selector into sport mode, just drive it down one extra step, you will get into the S mode for the gearbox, which sharpens the throttle and makes this car extremely brutal and fast. It's quite nice to drive. So yeah, that's something you might want to know if you're complaining about how delayed the throttle input is. So yeah, it's a pretty fun car to drive. All the batteries are in the floor, and they are pretty heavy. This car has a 95 kilowatt hour battery, out of which you can actually use 86.5 kilowatt hour, and that's a lot. For my calculations, I couldn't find the exact space, but I think it's about 600 kilos of added weight only for the battery. And it's fortunate that it's all sitting under you, so that the car is actually pretty fun to drive. The suspension is an air suspension. It doesn't have the clever 48-volt anti-roll bars you get on an SQ7, but the car deals nicely with the weight anyhow because it's sitting so down low. And the air suspension is really comfortable, really well muffled out. So it's a very, very quiet atmosphere inside this cabin. And that's true at higher speeds as well on the highway. Our tester does have double glazed windows, and those help out a lot too. but it's very quiet in here, and I think you guys can hear it just through my microphone because there was really no wind noise while I was talking to you. What about energy consumption? Well, it is really cold right now when I'm testing the car. On average, I saw an average range of about 320 kilometers, about 200 miles, which is really good. I mean, yeah, the official rating is over 400 kilometers, but considering the weather and the traffic, I don't think I could ever get close to that. But if the weather was nicer, around 20 degrees, right now it's about 5 Celsius, I think I could have gotten well over 400 kilometers of range out of the car. Charging is quite tricky because this is a big battery. If you're using a 11 kilowatt charger, it's going to take about 9 hours to replenish it. If you're using a 50 kilowatt charger, fast charger, which are the most common you can find, that's going to take about 2 hours to replenish the battery. And if you're using the fastest charger this car supports, which is 155 kilowatts, it will take about half an hour to get up to 80% of the battery, which is actually quite good. But those chargers are pretty rare right now. They are increasing in numbers, but it's gonna take a while until they become the mainstream option. So what's the takeaway about the Audi e-Tron Sportback? Well, I like it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that despite its roofline sloping towards the back, and I do think this car looks really good. Despite its roofline, you also have room in the back for adults. I can fit in the back with this seat adjusted to my comfortable driving position. Now I'm 6 feet tall and 120 kilos. I'm not a small person, but I can still fit in the back, which is pretty awesome. I love the technology inside. I love the design, the materials. It's pretty awesome. What I don't like is this setup, the digital rear view mirrors. I wouldn't get them. Luckily, they're an option. Save your money, get the Bang & Olufsen sound system because they're priced roughly the same. It could have been a bit more efficient, but you know what? And it could have been a little bit cheaper, but it's right up there with its main rival, the Mercedes EQC, which I have a review with on my channel. And I think between the two, I would choose this one because it looks better in my book, feels, you know, younger, more stylish, whereas the Mercedes is more sober, more, you know, Mercedes style, more elegant and so on. That said, this has been my review of the Audi e-Tron Sportback. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share, and of course, subscribe. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.